Welcome, Gunrunner.
Of all the systems I've owned over the years, the Atari Lynx is unquestionably my favourite of the lot. I first fell in love with a handheld when I played on one my friend brought back from a holiday in California in 1989, and I just had to have one of my own. And after saving up my paper round wages for weeks and weeks on end, my dream finally came true in 1990 when I purchased a brand new Atari Lynx with a copy of Xenophobe and an all-important AC adapter from a branch of Dixon's. My original Atari Lynx 1 sadly died when my younger brother spilled a glass of lemonade on it, but thankfully it was still under extended guarantee, which my dad insisted on getting luckily, and Dixon's happily swapped it over for a new Atari Lynx II, which I still own to this very day, along with a complete set of all 72 commercial releases, as well as another 30 or so aftermarket and homebrew releases. So given my huge affection for the Lynx, it might come as a surprise that it took me so long to get round to covering the handheld in my Amazing Facts series. But wait no longer, because here it is, and I hope you find this trivia every bit as interesting as you did in previous episodes.
Hey, Mr. Block, can I go to the bathroom?
2 minutes.
Oh, yes! Good man. Oh, yes, yes! I'm in the tube! Oh, yes, yes! Oh! Right!
Introducing Lynx from Atari, the color video game you can get away with. Well, sometimes.
The system we now know as the Atari Lynx was originally designed by a team of talented engineers at famous Californian software company Epix. The three people who came up with the concept were none other than Dave Needle, R.J. McCall and Dave Morse, who had previously developed the technologically advanced Amiga computer. But after being dumped by Commodore, they were looking for a new project and came up with the idea to produce a colour handheld. The bosses at Epix had previously been encouraged to create a handheld console by former president Mike Katz, who rather ironically had just left to join Atari, and soon got behind the Handy Game project. With a team of talented programmers already working for Epix like Chuck Somerville, Stephen Landrum and Peter Engelbright, they really felt that they had the dream team to bring this highly ambitious project to life. As engineering on the Handy Game reached completion, team at Epix discovered that the company had run out of money to support the project, and with software sales in decline, they were only going to be left with one option: selling the Lynx technology to another company in order to get it to market. The first people on their list were Nintendo. They were the current market leaders in North America, so seemed to be an obvious choice. Shortly after reaching out to the Big N, Epix were invited to send a team over to the Nintendo HQ in Japan so they could evaluate the project in more detail. However, this didn't quite go as planned. The story goes that the Epix engineers gave a big presentation to the top brass at Nintendo, who just sat there in silence throughout. And then at its conclusion, they simply wheeled out a prototype of the Game Boy, and that was that. The Handy team knew there was no way they could compete. A quickly arranged meeting with Sega straight after didn't really go to plan either. As much as Sega liked what they were shown, they were very arrogant about their own R&D department and felt that they could simply copy the design and come up with something better. However, history tells us that Sega's initial attempts to copy the advanced design of the Lynx failed, and they decided to take the easy option and create a handheld master system instead. After the initial talks with Nintendo and Sega failed, Epix were only left with one place to go: Atari. However, the Handy team themselves were dead against this move, having previously had their fingers burnt by the long drawn out Amiga negotiations. But they were left with no other choice and desperately wanted to get the handheld to market, so reluctantly conceded. A deal with Atari was soon agreed where Epix would retain the rights to the hardware design itself and would become a first party software developer too, giving them a nice royalty-based income stream. However, one thing they couldn't agree on was what to call this new portable. Atari hated the handy name and wanted to come up with something more marketable. Atari initially announced the system as the Advanced Portable Entertainment System, very much following the naming convention of their previous consoles like the Atari Video Computer System, 7800 Pro System and XE Game System. But Atari Games designer Peter Engelbreit pointed out that the acronym for this spelled apes, and so Atari quickly dropped it in favour of Lynx, a nod to the system's amazing link-up capacity rather than its big cat namesake. During the early 90s we very much saw the start of the so-called bit wars. It started with Sega using the 16-bit nature of their Genesis console to bash the rival Nintendo Entertainment System in advertising across North America. Then we saw similar things from NEC as they introduced the PC Engine to the West as the remodelled TurboGrafx 16, which prompted Sega to respond and call their claims into question when it was pointed out that the console did indeed have an 8-bit CPU, very similar to the one found in the NES in fact. With the Lynx we had a somewhat similar story, because Atari were very quick to boast about the 16-bit nature of the handheld, especially once the Game Gear arrived and they couldn't use the colour screen as the big selling point. Like the PC Engine, the Lynx featured a 16-bit graphics chip, but what actually staked its claim for the category more than anything else was that it also had a 16-bit data bus, so both the 16-bit graphics chip and 16-bit math coprocessor weren't bottlenecked. You do still get a few people who try to claim the Lynx is an 8-bit system, based purely on the 65CO2 CPU alone, but for me there is no doubt that the Lynx should be regarded as a 16-bit console. I have already mentioned in brief that the Lynx features a 16-bit math coprocessor, more commonly known as a Blitter chip, but what I haven't really spoken about is how this is used and why it's so revolutionary for the time. Blitter chips were certainly not unknown back in 1989. The Commodore Amiga had one, and later versions of its big rival, the Atari ST, did too. But they had never been used in a console, as nobody ever thought a console would need a processor to help with complex math. And I'm sure a lot of people are watching this and questioning why that would be useful for creating games. Well, as previously mentioned, the Lynx has an 8-bit 65CO2 CPU, which runs at a fairly speedy 4 MHz. Well, speedy when you realise that it's over twice as fast as the 6502 variation found in the NES, and 4 times as fast as the one in the Commodore 64. But when your CPU also has to keep up with a 16 MHz graphics chip, you start to see why there may be issues. So the Blitter can take a lot of that load off the CPU, whilst leaving it free to perform more functional tasks. At the heart of the Lynx is 2 custom chips known as Mikey and Susie. The former provides the handheld's 4-channel stereo sound, and the included 8-bit DAC can play digitised sound on any channel without impacting the CPU, which is why so many Lynx games have amazing speech. But the latter is undoubtedly the most important, as it's the Susie chip that gives the Lynx its amazing 16-bit graphics, that includes hardware scaling, distortion, flipping, tilting, clipping, multi-directional scrolling, compression and almost unlimited sprites. In 1989 there was no other system on the market, console or computer, that could perform all of those custom graphics capabilities. In fact, the only place you would find such things as hardware scaling was in the arcades, the most famous examples being Sega's superscaler games like Outrun and Afterburner. There was no other home system that could replicate these effects until the arrival of the Sega Mega CD add-on over 2 years later. And before somebody out there mentions the Super Nintendo, nope, the SNES could only scale background layers and not sprites. As already mentioned earlier, the Lynx got its name from its unique link-up capabilities that actually allows you to connect up to 16 machines together via the Comlinks port for a spot of multiplayer madness. That said though, the highest number of players supported by any game is the 8 players available in Todd's Adventures in Slime World, with Battle Wheels and Checkered Flag not far behind, offering up to 6. Many people argue that you never meet enough people to take advantage of it, but growing up I knew 6 other people with an Atari Lynx, so I regularly enjoyed 4-player Comlinks on the likes of California Games, Rampage, Xylon Mercenary and Xenophobe, and if you attend any present-day Atari expos such as City Venture or Jagfest, you'll always find a checkered flag tournament you can compete in. Interestingly, the Comlinks feature was originally called Red Eye and was supposed to be completely wireless with the communication provided via infrared, but it was too easy to break the connection, so Epyx came up with the innovative looped cable system. The same design team later adapted this idea for the daisy chaining setup of the 3DO controllers too. One of the chief criticisms of the Atari Lynx was its vast size. At nearly 12 inches long, a lot of people struggled to call it a handheld, and it was certainly too big to just slip in your pocket. The most incredible thing about this was that according to ex-Epyx staff, there was more than one design created for the Lynx, but the American focus groups all concluded that bigger was better, a bit like their cars, and the decision was made. To both combat these comments and reduce the costs of manufacturing the handheld, Atari introduced a new, much more compact model in 1991 that would be informally known as the Lynx II. This new unit was not only smaller in size, well, a lot shorter in length anyway, it also featured a number of very beneficial hardware differences. The biggest of these was a new lower consumption screen that not only added an extra hour or so onto the battery life, but also gave us a power saving backlight switch too. Other more minor improvements included moving the game card slot to the back of the unit, adding rubber hand grips to both ends, and small brackets to attach a carry strap. The only downgrade from the original Lynx was the smaller, quieter speaker. But this very much helped with the improved battery life of the Lynx II. One of the saddest stories associated with the Lynx is the cancellation of the mid-90s revival, which would have very much changed the fortune of the machine and the way we look at it in the present day. After pulling back some of the funding towards the Lynx to concentrate on launching the Jaguar console, Atari planned to pump a load back in based on the predicted success of their new 64-bit system. In fact, Trammell Atari was so convinced that the Jaguar would be a huge hit and their plans would come to fruition that they had already started to fund new Lynx developments once the system was launched. Not only would the Lynx be advertised alongside the Jaguar, it would also get handheld versions of its big games, including the likes of Alien vs Predator, Battlezone 2000, Pitfall the Man Adventure, Breakout 2000, Wolfenstein 3D, and a new Star Raiders game. Sadly, the Jaguar's failure in the marketplace put paid to those plans, with most of these games being cancelled before development really got started. We did get the new Battlezone and Missile Command games in 1995 as promised, and they turned out to be the last Atari published games for the Lynx. And in more recent years, prototypes of games like Road Riot 4-Wheel Drive, Raiden, and the incredible Alien vs Predator have snuck out the door too, giving us a tantalising taste of what could have been. The Lynx might have lost the handheld wars to its big rivals, the Sega Game Gear and Nintendo Game Boy, but it's very much enjoyed the best afterlife of all three. Even after Atari officially discontinued the Lynx in 1996, the console continued to be supported with officially licensed games from third-party publisher Telegames, who marketed a number of mostly complete but previously unreleased games such as Fat Bobby, Raiden, Hyperdrome and Bubble Trouble. Then in 1999, indie game publishers Songbird Productions were set up by Carl Forhan to support both the Lynx and Jaguar with new games, which would include previously unreleased prototypes as well as new original titles. Songbird's first release would be Ponks, an update of Atari's very first game. They are still the biggest publishers of new Atari Lynx games in the present day, with titles like Sky Raider, Centipede and RPG Wyvern Tales heading up their current release schedule. Other homebrew developers like Yastuna Games, Duranic, NW Software, Hex Games, White Lynx, Luxsoft and MD Games have also chipped in with some great new releases too, among others, making the Lynx the perfect machine to both own and collect for in the present day.
Can anyone handle the power of color?
Atari Lynx, the portable video arcade. Lynx, so packed with action, racked with attraction, stacked with more games for total satisfaction. It'll blow you away. Lynx, more fun and games from Atari.
And that rounds up my look at 10 amazing Atari Lynx facts. Which of these fabulous facts was your favourite? Or can you think of any other tantalising tidbits of trivia that I didn't include? I always love to hear the thoughts and views of my audience, so please get typing in that comments section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons in particular, their much appreciated pledges: Mitchell Valentino, Neptune, Seth A. Robinson, Carl Olsen, Thomas Henry and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now. You can get access to a host of extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching, I'll see you all again for another video very soon.